Hello everyone, this is GM Josh Friedel. Today I'm going to be doing a strategic lecture. Luckily they didn't give me too many instructions, so I can kind of lecture on whatever I want. In this case I'm going to be showing a game of mine I played at Chicago Open last year against a very strong Canadian junior named Shiyam Thavandiran. He'd probably hate me for mispronouncing his name, but I think I got it close enough. Very talented kid. I'd call him a kid because I remember when he was a kid. I actually played him in Toronto Open. I think it was 2009, I want to say. And you know, he seemed like a kid to me. He still seems like a kid to me, but he's college age. I mean, he's not he's not that young, but very talented. And so I knew he would, and he already beat a GM, I think, this tournament, so I knew he'd be quite a dangerous customer. So I decided to avoid theory. Not because I'm necessarily worried that he's theoretical, but because I find that people who don't know, I'd say openings are not his strength. So against people like this, they often don't know the nuances of positions. So when you play knight f3 or try to play more quietly, sometimes it works well. Not because you're trying to be theoretical, but because you're making it so that they really have to understand their positions. And while this doesn't always work, I'd say at this game my opening worked very well. Usually these days I play d4, but I mean, I play knight f3, c4, occasionally e4 if I want to get crazy. Knight f6, c4, e6, g3. I know he likes to play Bogo, he likes to play Nimzo, so I'm saying you're not going to play any of those things. He could play d5 going into a Catalan, but it's kind of my territory. I know it pretty well. It's not his territory. So again, preparation, you could see, is not always that deep. A lot of it's about I'm steering it towards what I'm comfortable with, and I know you're not as happy here. That's all it is. He played c5. So he was trying to get a hedgehog position, sort of. But unfortunately, he was not very precise in the opening, and this kind of backfired on him. So I played bishop g2. He plays a6. Getting a little strange, but nothing outrageous so far, right? I play knight c3. So I chose this move for a very simple purpose. Why didn't I castle? Just as for instance. Yeah, b5's coming, right? So I don't know if b5 is a great move. Maybe knight e5 works, but probably it doesn't do much. But why bother, right? Knight c3 is a useful move anyway. No reason to overthink it. Plays queen c7. So he's trying to be very tricky. What's his idea with queen c7? What is he trying to discourage? Indeed. But luckily, his setup's a little too cute. Like, it's kind of okay, but it gives me too many options because he's not putting pressure on my center. He's not making a threat of d5 ever. He's not really doing all that much. So while I don't want to say objectively it's just poor, because it's probably not, I would say it's a little bit strange. So I castle. He plays d6, sorry. So now what? How to proceed? His idea is still discouraging d4. He's trying to be flexible. What he's doing makes some sense, but he's going to encounter a problem, which we'll see. Yeah. No problem. I can take my time. The thing is, when your opponent's playing really weird, risky moves, sometimes you want to play quickly. But when they're playing moves like this, which are just kind of inflexible and waiting for you to play in the center, you can just take your time. There's no reason not to build up your position. So he plays bishop e7. Probably somewhere along these around here, he should have thought about b6, bishop b7. And that would have, it wasn't the setup he was aiming for exactly, but he'd get sort of a normal hedgehog. It would be okay. I don't want to say it would be fantastic for black, but his position would be probably fine. But he played here. I played bishop b2. He castled. And now I play d4. So almost always this pawn has to be captured. Usually allowing a move like d5 is really unpleasant. So he takes. I play with the knight. But here he has sort of an issue. What is his issue? What do you think his desired setup would be?
b6, bishop b7, knight d7.
Yeah. So what's the problem?
Can't do any of that because the diagonal's open.
Exactly. When you play hedgehog type positions, you often have to be precise to get your hedgehog. A lot of people kind of relax a little bit. And again, I think he played the opening a little bit casually, but now he's kind of regretting it because b6, bishop b7, if he played it earlier, he'd probably have a hedgehog with no problem. I'm not saying it's a great hedgehog. I have my fianchettoed bishop, which is where I want it. I get an e4, which is what I want. So I get a nice hedgehog, but it's still a perfectly normal position. It's nothing horrible for black. But here, he can't really get his hedgehog. Now the question is, he played rook e8. The question is, can he get a sort of normal position by playing knight c6? And I'm going to now turn off the sound. I don't like when the computer yells at my moves. I'm not saying knight c6 is a horrible move, but I have kind of an annoying move I can play on him now. Yeah. So if knight takes d4, I'm kind of more or less happy because I can take. If here, I can play rook d1. I'm just very harmonious with my pieces, right? But let's say he plays bishop d7. Aha. This is the problem. Because I don't really win any material, most likely. Maybe I would, I don't know, this is pretty weak. But the problem is this pin is just really annoying. So black has to get a very bad pawn structure, and also notice how my pieces are perfectly positioned, whereas black's are a lot more passive. So that's kind of the problem black encounters. So a move like knight c6, I'm not saying it's horrible, but it doesn't really solve black's problems. So he played rook e8. I play rook c1, has to be useful, right? Now knight c6 is not even a move. So he decides on knight d7. So now what? So you have a position where your pieces are harmonious, things are developing nicely, you have black a little bit restricted. So how do you proceed in a position like this? What kind of things do you look for?
Just some way to move your pieces forward.
Well, I would say a very simple answer would be improving moves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just improve. It's not obvious how your opponent improves, and it is obvious how you improve. That's the moment where you don't try anything fancy, you just try improving moves. Let your opponent show you they can improve. But the key is to choose improving moves which don't allow your opponent to free themselves. If you allow them to have an easy idea after an improving move, you probably want to wait on that one and choose other ones first. So to give you an example, e4 might be a perfectly okay move here. I would not play it. Any guesses as to why that would be?
It closes down the bishop's diagonal.
It does, and it's something which I don't want to do until I have to. Now, a move like b6 is probably not playable to the e5. Sometimes black can sack this exchange, by the way, and it's not so bad. Here, looks a little dubious, but let's say black plays rook b8. Next b6, next bishop b7. Okay, it's a little slow, but black gets development finished, right? This is not what I want. So I'd rather play an improving move that doesn't allow it at all. Because with the bishop open like this, if black tries rook b8, b6, I have a very simple antidote. But anyway, first, what do you think I played? What's a simple improving move? What pieces are not ideally placed yet?
The rook on f1,
Mhm.
maybe the queen,
Okay, so where do I want this rook?
probably d1,
Okay, where do I want the queen?
probably c2 or d2.
Okay, I opted for d2.
Okay.
But this is the point. He played knight f8, which is a little bit sad. But the idea is that if he tries rook b8, for example, I play here and black plays here, there's a very problematic move. Indeed. And you actually just lose material because I have take and then your rook's going to hang. So black doesn't even get to the finished development that way. So he opted for knight f8 and bishop d7. So he's kind of finished his development, but what's the problem? Would you say that knight on f8 is a ideally placed piece?
No.
It's not particularly active. It's okay, I improve. How do you improve now? Yep. There's no reason not to play the pawn to e4. The thing is, and this is one of those tough decisions, at least for me, this is always difficult. I never really want to play e4 because I like my bishop. I like to have an open bishop. But the fact is, eventually, you got to push. You have to expand. That's the whole idea. So eventually, you do want to play a move like e4. And I felt like here, my pieces were improving almost as much as they can. So it's as good a time as any to play it. So black played knight g6. So again, find a piece to improve. What piece is not ideal? It's very difficult once you have pieces that all look kind of nice. Then you have to come up with an idea usually before your opponent sorts out their mess. Bishop a3 is definitely a move that comes to mind. I don't think I played it yet. Oh no, I did. I thought I played knight c2 first, but no, I played bishop a3 first. So it happens when you get older, you know, just don't remember any of your games. No, I thought I played knight c2 first, but bishop a3 first. So I'm trying to target this weak pawn, make it feel a little less happy about its life. So black played rook d8. So now what?
Knight c2.
How'd you guess?
Well, you told us, but also it does attack d6.
It does attack d6, yes. So he plays back. Yeah, I mean, bishop c6 was what I kind of expected. But part of the problem is that now, let's say, I mean, knight e3 is a normal improving move, right? Really clamping down on the center. The problem is that now knight d5 is still kind of in the air, right? And it's sort of an annoying move. So again, I don't know if this is actually the best way to continue. This was part of the game I wasn't sure about, but it seemed like a natural way to build. So black played knight here. And I have to admit, this move kind of tempted me. So I played this rook f8. Rook f8 is definitely a slightly sad move. But at the same time, black needs a way to try to defend pieces, right? So after rook f8, the advantage at least is that this knight can draw back to e8. But this is where I kind of decided to be a little bit sneaky. I played this move. So what is the purpose of this move?
Play c5.
c5? Do I want to let my opponent out?
Probably not.
No. I'm a little crazy, but maybe not that crazy.
Oh, do you want to put the knight on b6?
Maybe. So there are some tactical points. For example, if after b6 I couldn't do anything, my move would look pretty silly. But there's a tactical problem with b6. Because yeah, black could play this move, I'd feel very stupid. So try to target black's weaknesses. What is weak now?
b6.
So how can you target it?
Queen d4.
Yeah, it's a weird looking move, but there's a problem now because you're attacking this pawn, and the only logical way to defend it would be knight d7, but this move also has a problem.
d6.
Yep. So that's kind of the point. But I would say, and I can tell you that I certainly was, you have to be very, very careful about moves like knight a4. Because you can often give up any advantage you have if you get too concrete too early. Moves like this are weird. It doesn't mean they're bad, but it means that if you play this at the wrong time, it can just be a stupid move. It can just be your opponent does something to counter it, and then your knight feels stupid, or they get in b5, or something happens. But on occasion, when you build up your position, you do have some kind of concrete move like this to increase your advantage even more. I don't know if this is actually best. I mean, I thought that actually in this position, black might try going back, believe it or not. And now I might have gone back.
Okay.
And it seems silly, but what have I lost? I repeated moves once. It happens all the time. And then I'd maybe find something else. I was thinking about taking this pawn, but I thought that this was not so clear, this endgame. Here, takes. My pawns get kind of broken up. Black gets a lot of activity, either with rook in, maybe rook d4, I don't know. Or maybe knight e5 is also possible. I just wasn't sure. Maybe this is okay for me, actually, but I don't know. It was a little tough for me to say, but okay, I was looking at it. I'm not saying I wouldn't have taken on d6, but here's the thing. If they play bishop d7, at least you can go back. You haven't lost anything, right? If they don't, and he didn't, Now I can build my position even further. With which move?
F4.
When you play a move like knight a4, you usually have something specific in mind, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot.
You're not just going to exactly. You have to be careful. You put your knight on a4, you better have a follow-up. If you just play a4, then you feel kind of foolish, right?
Bishop a5 or bishop b4 or queen.
Yeah.
Bishop b4.
And I think this move he missed, because here he got into a really deep think. Because again, he thought I was really focused on the d6 square, but he didn't see that my idea was to sneak out to b4. And now black has a serious problem, because bishop a5 is coming, and b6 still runs into queen d4, and I just win this pawn. So again, ideas like this are very rare. You usually don't get to play them. But the reason why is because usually black has well-placed pieces. Black has pawn here, knight here, bishop here. Of course you're not going to be able to do this then. But when your opponent has worse than normal pieces, when they're kind of stuffed, when their pieces are on the back rank, that's when you look for concrete ideas. Because often tactical ideas that normally don't work can work. And again, I'm not even sure that what I did was correct, but it ended up being justified a little bit, and the main reason is because black just has very poor pieces. So tactical ideas are more likely to work. So black played back. I went to a5, played f4. The reason I played f4, anyone know? I hated to yell at you after you played f4, but now that I played it, it's fine.
Stop the knight from going to c6.
Exactly. I thought that knight e5 to c6 was an easy way back. I didn't want that knight on g6 to get back in the game. And he can't stop knight to b6. If b5, I take it, and all of a sudden this knight is pretty bad, right? Maybe black could think about sacking the exchange. First of all, I could take the knight, maybe, but probably I just take this. But I highly doubt this is enough. Oops. I mean, my king's not quite open enough. Black's pieces are still weird. Probably not worth an exchange. Maybe I play knight c4 now, covering all the squares. I don't know. I don't really believe in black's position here. But it was something I had to consider. But black played here. So yeah, and you'll notice this about like when people have really tough positions, they're forced to play ugly moves. And at least psychologically, even if ugly moves are the best, it's hard for us to play. We don't want to play moves like this, but sometimes it's necessary. So knight b6, knight f8. But I thought a long time here, and I couldn't really find a way to punish black. Black's going to play knight d7 next. I wasn't really sure what to do. It looks like I made huge progress, right? I sunk a knight into b6. How could that possibly be bad? But the problem is that, well, what do I do afterwards? What happens when black puts the knight on d7? Do I want to trade pieces? Why not?
It loses space congestion.
Exactly. But I almost have to. Otherwise, I end up just backtracking with all my guys. So I chose king h1. I don't know if king h1 is the most precise. Maybe I should just launch. But okay, I chose king h1. I'm glad I actually played the move on the screen that I said this time. It would be embarrassing if I forgot everything. But this I remember. Knight d7. And I made a really difficult decision here. I'm not convinced it's a bad one, but it was very difficult. What do I do? It looks very anti-positional. Let me give you that hint. And I'm still not sure it's good. Computer, I recall, does not like it, but that doesn't always convince me in positions like this. F5 is definitely anti-positional. You got that marked down, but I'm not sure it does much. That you're allowing knight e5, you're allowing bishop g5, it's probably too much.
Yeah, it's just opening the d5 square.
No, it's interesting, but I'm never ever going to take, so. Yeah. I'm taking the worst piece on the planet. But there's a method to my madness. Why am I taking that bishop?
Does it make f5 stronger? Maybe the position of
Actually, f5 can come into play, but it comes into play way, way, way later. It's more to do with how is black ever, and I do mean ever, going to get counterplay now. Black's only source of counterplay in these types of hedgehog positions are what two moves? b5 or d5. Good luck playing d5 without a bishop, buddy. And that's kind of my idea. It seems silly because, like, what is black going to do anyway? And again, I'm not totally sure this is the right decision. But this was kind of my thinking, that okay, I take the bishop, I get rid of black's worst piece, but how is black ever going to get true counterplay? If black ever opens the position, opens the light squares with b5 or d5, I'm pretty happy. I have my 2 bishops.
Play b5.
This is something which, like, the problem is when we're young, we get the bad bishop drilled into us so bad. Or when we first start out, we're like, all these positions, you have a terrible bishop, you never ever take the bad bishop. But closed positions and positional chess is a lot more nuanced. There are so many positions where you actually do want to take the bad bishop because in the future, they're going to want that bishop. How many times do you see, like, you take a bad French bishop on c8, and all of a sudden e6 is super weak and can't be defended? Happens all the time. So there are many moments where getting rid of a bad bishop is not as bad as you would think. I don't know if this is exactly one of these situations, but I can tell you that not having the 2 bishops, or rather having the 2 bishops for me, was a really nice thing later in the game. So I played queen b2. Again, I'm not sure about the precision of these moves, but I was just trying to maneuver my pieces a little bit. Black played bishop f8. I played back, because my bishop no longer is useful on a5, right? I pinned the knight. Congratulations to me, but not really doing a whole lot. I remember I really wanted to set up knight d5, but I could never get it to work because black can always play b6 on me. So it goes. I play back. Black plays knight c5. I play queen c2. So why am I going to c2? Yeah. I want to play b4, and so I'm fixing my queen. That's the nice thing when you have kind of a positional edge that's not going anywhere. You can take your time. You can move back and forth. I wanted my idea, by the way, was to advance on the queen side, to push my queen side pawns. And my general thinking was that without that bishop, he's going to have a hard time stopping this plan and creating counterplay. So black played queen b8. I played b4. I played a4. And this was that moment where, and you always come to this, no matter how strong your opponent is, when they're playing a passive position, when they're defending, there's always one moment where they lash out incorrectly. They don't like to be passive. No one likes to just sit there. I don't care how solid a opponent you're playing. No one likes to just sit there. And the thing is, you shouldn't almost ever sit there the whole game, and most players know this, that if you sit the whole game, eventually your opponent's going to beat you. But there are positions where you have to at least be patient. And in this position, black should really not try to do a whole lot. One interesting idea was maybe trying a5. Looks a little strange, but the idea would be that now you at least secure this square. I don't know if this is actually that good for black, but okay, black's in the game, right? And part of it also was, I was fairly sure he was going to play b5 here. Sometimes you can see it in their eyes. You just know. He hated leaving his pieces, so bam, he played it very quickly. He didn't have tons of time either. I can't say I had tons. Like, this position, as nice as it looked, was actually difficult to play because all my pieces look so good, you have to figure out what to do with them, right? Sometimes those are the toughest ones to play. But why was I happy to see b5? He's trying to get counterplay. He's breaking a little bit. What is the problem with the move b5?
You can give him a weakness on b5.
It's kind of hard to do that.
You can't. Can you not just play one? It's like c takes and a5.
Yeah. Very simple. Now, when I look at things like this, you have to realize the pawn on a5, I'm not going to queen that guy anytime soon. But it's kind of like a reserve, like you save it for later. You know, leftover piece of cake, you put it in the fridge. You can get it anytime you want. But the whole point is that it's something that's always there. It's always an advantage I'm going to have. Now, if I'm careless and allow black to, say, play knight a6 and get b4 as a weakness, which is definitely something that can happen, then maybe it'll backfire. But the whole point is that you kind of give yourself something for later. And that's part of what strong positional chess is. You kind of collect advantages little by little. So I have the 2 bishops. That was one advantage I collected, right? The next one is this pass pawn on a5. So the more of these little advantages I collect, the harder it's going to be for black to hold the position down. Not one of those things is not going to be fatal by itself, right? You usually need more than one advantage to win a game. But you collect, all right, passed a pawn. You collect, all right, 2 bishops. You don't have your light squared bishop. You collect, and eventually the pressure just increases. And you'll see how this happens. So black played knight a6. And that'll be my guess, that black thought, okay, I have b4, the knight blocks the pawn anyway. But my thinking was a little different. It was just that, okay, I have a passed a pawn now. Your b pawn might become weak later. You know? But mostly it's just, I have this for later in the game. You now have this pawn to worry about. You can't just abandon it anytime. Now, I do have to worry about d5, but the nice thing for d5, of course, I do have it well covered, right? It opens up my bishop, so black has to be careful with d5. So I played queen b2, not wanting to allow it. Black played rook c8. And I don't know, here maybe I played a little too simplistic. I decided that the actual simplest way for me to try to convert this to advantage was actually to trade off the rooks. I thought that if I trade off all the rooks, black's going to have a harder time holding down the queen side. That was my thinking. Again, I'm not sure it's correct. This was maybe a position where I could have tried something else. Maybe I could have played, I don't know, even just like h3, king h2, improving my king, just really taking my time. I had lots of different options. But again, I decided on this. I wasn't super unhappy with it. Black played knight f6. So I continue with my idea. I take, play rook c1. Again, maybe not the best choice. Yeah, so black played knight e8 here, which I think was a little too pessimistic. If ever there was a time to try d5, it was now. Now, after takes, I think that I end up in a better endgame. So yeah, the problem here was that f7 is quite weak, right? Not to mention the a pawn. So if black just plays here, for instance, pretty sure I can take, play a6, and between these two weaknesses, it's going to be very difficult to play as black. So you can see why the a pawn comes in handy, right? That guy is really nasty right now. But this move was kind of clever. I think I may have missed this during the game. And I have to move back, because now if queen c6, I think the problem was this move. And somehow I'm not coordinated. Kind of weird, right? I don't know. But I didn't see all this during the game. I will admit this quite freely. And now you can take, and again, promising for white, but maybe not winning, you know? But hey, who says I'm even winning here? In any case, my opponent played backwards. I took and played here, very methodical. I don't even mind the endgame. I don't feel like my king's better than black's, right? And in the endgame, I can slowly push this pawn, bring my king to the center. I'm not saying the endgame, again, is a complete win, but the endgame is going to be really unpleasant between the two bishops, b5, and the pawn on a5. That was my thinking. Make sense? So black played here. I played h4. Again, just trying to improve my king a little bit. I don't like my king stuck without any moves to go to, right? Black played knight c7. So what move do you think is coming? So here's my question. Should black be playing for d5? What is this question kind of hinge on? Because these are the toughest moments to decide whether to play a move like d5 or not. For some players, probably for my opponent, it was automatic. I don't want to sit here forever. Of course I'm going to play d5. The same thinking that made him play b5. And do we think b5 was a good move? Probably not so much, right? So the question is he correct in thinking d5 is what he should be playing for? But here's our question, and it was the same question with b5. Is it better to wait or to play d5? Waiting isn't always the worst strategy. How do you decide whether to wait or whether to push? Whether to try to create a mess, whether to try to just hold back?
See if your opponent can do anything.
Yeah. It's one of the toughest decisions to make. But I think that unlike in the position where he plays b5, which kind of gives me a clear positional edge, I do not think d5 does this. d5 is a risky move in that you might lose a pawn, in that you might, open up my bishop a little bit. But you're creating a weakness on b4 that you can possibly attack. You're opening up the position, and keep in mind, white's king is not perfect here. You might get counterplay against white king. I think that even though it didn't necessarily work out for him, playing for d5 was absolutely the right decision. Because if you sit here, I have so many improving moves. I can play queen d3, I can play king h2, I can improve my bishop, I can play for f5, an idea you had before, which now certainly does not look stupid. If you give me unlimited moves here, I have a lot of improvements to play. And keep in mind, if I get in 4 improvements and then try to initiate complications, you might have a much harder time defending. So I think he was absolutely justified in his decision to play for d5 here. But notice how I don't think he should have played b5, because b5 simply gave me that passed pawn on a5. That's a concrete problem. So that's a good way to kind of figure it out. First of all, can my opponent do a lot if I do nothing? If the answer is yes, you probably shouldn't be doing nothing. Then you're just giving him free moves to improve. Ask yourself if time is a factor. Ask yourself, if I play this lashing out move, do they get a permanent weakness to work with? Do they get a permanent strength? Does it, what are the changes that happen in the position? It's one of the hardest things to do in chess. I mean, I'm sure if I were black in this position, I would have made all sorts of bad decisions. It's just really, really difficult. But the key is you have to be very disciplined and pick your moments well. Is this a moment I lash out? Is this a moment I get counterplay? Or is this a moment I need to be patient? And the same goes when you're playing the offense. Is this a moment where I want to just be methodical, trade queens, get my queen on the c-file? Is this a moment where I should be playing quickly because my opponent's going to regroup? Is this a moment where my opponent has no improving moves and then you play slowly? So these are the ways you think about these positions, at least for me. So I played queen d3, trying to keep a lid on d5. And black does indeed play d5. So the question is, how do you react to such a move? You think you're prepared for it, you're ready for it, but it comes. Quite possible. Queen d4 would have been a pretty good move, I think. I didn't play that, but I think it may have been a nice move. I ended up playing something else. I played knight here. I wanted the pawn defended by 2 pieces so that my queen was free, essentially, was my thinking. I don't know if that was correct. I mean, queen d4 has a lot of merit, too. But yeah, if you try to take right away, the problem is now you're really opening up the position, but you're opening up your own king as well. So for example, I think the idea was actually just to start taking. Let me see if I got this right. Yeah, if you trade everything, it's going to be bad, but I think actually you could just take here because this pawn's pinned as well, right? So it takes, and this is hanging, and I just wasn't sure. You have to be careful about your own king. It's a little messy. This is kind of an example of a line you don't want. But it's important you're prepared for d5, right? So I played here. This was my prepared move. Black played queen e8. So now what? Do I want to take on d5? It is a pawn up for offer. So if I play here, for example, takes with knight, so now this guy's under heavy threat. Yeah, so I don't have to take this, but if I don't, then black certainly made progress, right? So if I take, queen comes to e2, I don't know. I've seen it happen. You can end up worse in positions like this. I've certainly done it myself. And it looks, because you think, I'm winning a pawn, it's important not to create a narrative for yourself. Like, I've been grinding my opponent out, and now I win a pawn. It makes perfect sense. You have to make sure this is your moment. If you take this pawn prematurely, allow queen e2, I mean, who knows, right? And again, just an example of something I don't want. But again, I don't think I have to be in a rush to take, right? So I could have played king h2 was maybe an interesting move, improving. But I chose a different improving move, bishop c3. Again, just trying to improve my pieces little by little. Again, I wasn't sure about this move because sometimes if takes, knight d5, I'm kind of putting it on pre. I forget exactly what my idea was. I think because I'm threatening this pawn, I get a tempo. And I think I was going to use that tempo. But king h2 might have been a little wiser. I don't know. It ended up being okay. But black played h6. So the question is now, how do I improve? I could play a move like king h2 still. But I was actually very happy with what I did. I saw h6, and I was happy to see h6. So the question is, what approach can I take now?
Maybe g4, g5, or
g4, that's a bit reckless.
Okay.
I mean, g4, now maybe takes, and here, I don't know, man. It's a lot of stuff loose. Some people are perfectly fine moving all the pawns in front of their king willy-nilly, I'm not one of those people. But I also think that it's objectively risky, and I'm not sure what you're accomplishing either. If you get in g5, g6, I could kind of be with you, but I don't know if it's going to happen for you.
It
Maybe guessing was the problem. I don't know. But I was thinking, this is one of the thoughts I had during this position. And again, I'm not saying these are all correct thoughts. Again, for me, these are complicated positions. I am not 100% sure of myself always. But one of my thoughts was that, you know what? I'm really annoyed that black's king is safe and mine is not. I would rather we both have kings that are not ideal. Because, again, my main goal was I felt like if I could trade queens, my winning chances would be really good. But it's kind of hard to force that if your opponent doesn't want to. So what I'd like is at least have my opponent's king be a little weak also. So how can I make it so that maybe my opponent's king becomes a little bit weaker? H5 is possible, but you have to be very careful. Imagine you get hit by F5 at the wrong moment. And then this guy hangs, right? You got to be very careful.
Can I play F5? Pawn goes to F5.
That's what I did. So what's the main idea? What's your threat?
Bring up the king's defense.
Well, let me just give you an example. Let's say black just plays king somewhere, right? Just to show you. And I take, what is the difference between this and our previous position? What has happened that's been in white's favor?
Black's king is a little bit more open.
Yes. This king is no longer clearly a strength or clearly safe. Black's king is also open. You've opened this diagonal. There's this guy always hanging. I might get a tempo move on this pawn. All of a sudden, black's king is not comfortable. Doesn't mean my king's more comfortable, but I think black's is less comfortable. And to me, that makes black's life a lot harder. You see what I mean? So that was my main goal with F5. I wanted black to have to think about what to do with that king. So black took on E4 and took here, which is logical, right? However, this was a bit of a windfall for me. What happened to my pieces that was so good?
I mean, he's drawn out your bishop. It's much more active now. Here.
My bishop's much more active. The position's wide open, and I kind of like that because...
You have the two bishops.
Exactly. So, again, I wasn't 100% sure, but I felt like this was clearly an improvement to my position. And notice how this pawn could actually be kind of annoying. If black could put this pawn back here and play g6, bishop g7, might be a little bit annoying for me. Of course, he has to watch out for queen d4, but just in general, I like having the pawn here when I have the light square bishop. Maybe not a huge deal, but I was kind of happy with it. So black played check in here. Now here, I'm not saying what I found was amazing, but I found something very clever here. I basically stole a tempo. I love stealing tempi. It's great. It's like you're stealing minutes. First of all, what is black maybe threatening? Possibly.
Queen goes to H3 check.
I don't know if it does a lot, but I don't want to allow it. Who wants to allow queen h3? That's ridiculous. So originally I was thinking, oh, Josh, just play king h2. But I could not help myself. I found what I thought was super clever. And again, I'm not 100% sure it's best, but it worked out quite nicely, actually. Especially considering my opponent was in time trouble and wanted to stick to simpler moves. So I'll give you a hint. I wanted to play bishop f5 also, but then queen c6 check, and I couldn't find anything better really than king h2 or going back, and I don't know. I didn't want to play king h2 for some reason. I'm forgetting now, but because it allows knight d5. Yeah. So after bishop f5, queen c6, I just have to go back. I didn't like that.
Queen f3.
Queen f3, I didn't want to allow queen h3.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm not 100% sure it's a killer, but I don't want to deal with it. I'm too lazy. You'll notice laziness is a very common feature of GMs. We see queen h3, we don't care if it's good. We just don't want to bother with it. What's the point? How do you steal time? Well, bishop f5, then queen c6.
Right, so.
But
Oh. Oh, yeah, it's like a GM move. Always like bishop h7 check whenever possible.
yeah, but it's not random.
Sure, yeah.
It's clear the king is worse on h8 than on g8, right?
Right.
Now queen d8's with tempo, the f7 pawn can hang, so it's clearly a worse version, right?
Do you think that's like 50 rating points, knowing to play bishop h7 check?
Maybe 25. I wouldn't push it. It's a very, keep in mind, it's probably not even clearly the best move. But again, I like to steal little tempi, right? You never know when that one tempi is going to really come in handy. One tempo is really going to come in handy. And by the way, it does. Black, I play king g2. I think, yeah, I wanted to go towards the center because I'm preparing for the endgame, right?
Okay.
So black played here. So black wants counterplay desperately. And I do not care to allow it. So what do I play?
King h3.
Nah, I found something slightly more active.
Queen f3.
Queen f3 would be kind of sneaky. This is a little bit more direct, but the same idea. Queen f5 is a monster threat, right?
Right.
But I wanted to play a more active move while threatening it. So now I'm threatening queen f5, which is kind of embarrassing because it's just mate. Isn't it convenient to have the queen here?
Yeah.
And if black goes back, I can always play queen f5, queen f6, and that's also going to be over. So what does black have to play?
Queen e6.
No, 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 no. Give me my endgame. And the endgame was my favorite phase of this. Yeah. So black took with the pawn. Taking with the knight's possible, but you allow bishop to b7 with tempo. It's a little hard to do that. And also this king is really bad, right? In the endgame, my king's very happy because I'm much closer. So black took, but this is also kind of a bad pawn weakness. So how do you convert this endgame? What are the steps? Because I think objectively this endgame should be just lost. Black has a bad pawn structure. I have that beauty on a5. I have the two bishops in a wide open position, and black's more passive. There's no way it should not be winning. First, paralysis. Paralysis is a very important technique in these. I chose this one because I don't want this knight moving at all. I want it to have no dreams of ever moving. So black plays here. What's next? Lock them down. No pushing of the pawns for you. I want the pawn stuck on those squares. The same color as his bishop, right? An added bonus that these pawns can never ever get attacked, right? If I played king f3, not saying this would be a horrible move, but now black plays h5. Ah, my king can't move. See that? Lock him down. So king here. Prove my king. g4, logical, right? So here black plays g6, which was a little bit impatient. But at the same time, what is black going to do? If black just sits, eventually I will be able to win. Although sitting would have lasted the longest. If he tries this, what was my plan? Because that's the thing, you have to see all the active moves, right? If you miss a move like knight d5, you can really pay for it. But luckily I did see it. Bishop g7 is kind of clever, but the problem is I think it's too clever. First of all, you're winning a side on the worst side of a pawn on the worst side of the board. Usually not the best idea. But also after I take and take, I think we're just liquidating. So we end up just trading all the pawns. This is not what you want. Too clever, come on. You guys can be simple. Remember, I don't know if I told you guys about the Indiana Jones thing. No, never mind. Forget it. Wrong audience. I was explaining this to a student that you want to choose the golden cup, but sometimes you have to choose the carpenter's cup, the more direct, the not as pretty one, but it works just fine. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm just talking to air, but it's okay. A few people will laugh in the audience. Or at least they'll groan, one of the two. Simple, direct.
Bishop d5.
So bishop d5 is possible, but this is actually quite simple. So the point is that now, if you try to take this pawn, I just take.
Oh, wow.
See that? If knight takes a6. Simple, right? You don't have to get too fancy about it. But you have to make sure you see it. And the problem is knight d5, bishop d2, there's nothing better than going back. There's no way to actually activate. So it's kind of a clever little trick. Yeah, and if you take with the bishop, I think I'm just super, super boring about it. And I just take, and play a6. And that's that. Extra piece I should be able to win. Keep in mind that I do not have to allow black to liquidate all these pawns. Like if black plays here, the key is that there is no way I am allowing pawn takes pawn. Right? You have to be careful. But I do this, there's no h5 for you. I go here. So, black goes here. I just park this guy and kind of laugh a little bit and then go here. Pretty easy win. But you have to be very careful. If you allow the pawns to get liquidated at the wrong moment, it could go very badly. Black played here. 6, I say no more to knight d5. Take. King f8. Black has no moves. So how do I finish the game? I play this first. I didn't mean to go that far ahead, but shouldn't give away anything. So here's the key. I thought a little while here to make sure I found the proper way to finish it off. So how do you finish it off allowing 0 counterplay? And I do mean 0. The number 0. By the way, notice how I collected another weakness, right? You have this strength, 2 bishops, paralysis, weakness. When you add up a lot of weaknesses, the win tends to be much easier. So it's an important thing to kind of note as the game goes. It's easy to forget about weaknesses, but my thinking was very simple. I want to improve my knight on c2. If I improve that knight, I think the game is over. But for now, what's the problem?
You have to defend b4.
Yep. So I picked my piece that I thought wasn't doing all that much, and that's the piece I want to use. What piece do you think that is?
King.
Again, black has no moves, right? King h7. What can black do? Next move, I just move my knight, and then I'm just going to win the b5 pawn. Knight a3, knight takes b5, or even takes a6 first, takes b5, the game is over, right? Black played this, and then I actually found a different way, even faster.
Oh. Just put the knight on f5.
Black gave me another weakness. I'm happy to use it. And here he just gave up. It was over. It's easy to but it's easy to see. Like a move like knight e3 can just make your opponent resign because now it's like, well, I can't move or do anything, right? So again, I mean, games like this don't occur all the time where you kind of are able to get a dominating position like this. It's something which, only happens now and then, and you want to savor these moments when you can. So what I do is I just lecture about them endlessly. But I would say the main thing to remember from this is like the patience thing. Note how for both myself and my opponent, patience was an important commodity. That, for him, there were moments where he could have been more patient. Then there were moments where he lashed out with d5, which he should have. But then his position kind of fell apart around him when he didn't play the most accurate way. And from my perspective, the other one was the collecting of advantages. And this is something I'd say, again, GMs are kind of known for doing. And part of it's just always having, chess has kind of become a very concrete game where it's all about, all right, you go here, I go here, there are concrete things. Here the doubled pawns aren't as meaningful, and this is all good stuff. This is all true. But I would say that what people often forget about is there are still advantages which work in the long term. You may have doubled pawns that aren't weak now, but if you're not careful, down the road they could become weak, right? So what I'd say what happened here was I just collected little advantages. 2 bishops. slight advantage that I have permanently, not going anywhere, right? This passed pawn, slight advantage, not going anywhere. And I slowly collected advantages until here, you can see all the advantages very plainly. 2 bishops, better pieces, right? Black's tied down, passed pawn, weakness. When you collect enough advantages, the position can just play itself. And you see how you have this many weaknesses that you just can't hold it, no matter how skilled you are. You could defend like Giri or like Karyakin. You're not going to hold a position like this because it's just too many weaknesses. So one of the positional strategies that you guys can use is sometimes, again, don't think in terms of can I use it now, but so think in terms of what advantages can I collect for later in the game, which I can then cash in on in the end game or later in the middle game.